Today we're on the banks of the River Cam in the historic university town of Cambridge. We're going to explore the back sides of the colleges. The river flows around the university and we're going to follow its journey. This is a city that just emanates history, personality. You know, it comes from every pore of this city. There's so many famous people have studied at this historic university. You could name drop till the sun goes down. But we're just going to go for a walk through and see the sights and sounds of Cambridge. Come and join me. This is the beautiful gatehouse of St John's College in Cambridge. This college has had its fair share of pretty illustrious alumni. William Wordsworth, the great poet, he studied here. William Wilberforce, the man who pioneered the abolition of the slave trade, he also studied here. And Paul Dirac, who was the famous scientist from Bristol, who was an engineer and who pioneered the whole theory of relativity, of quantum mechanics and of antimatter. He was the real pioneer of these sciences, which Einstein picked up, developed his equation, E = mc². But the guy who really developed nuclear physics came from this college, St John's. So it's not just an ancient institution. There's a lot of modern knowledge which has come from this college as well. But this gatehouse is of particular interest because it's the coat of arms of Lady Margaret Beaufort, who was the mother of Henry VII. It was built in 1511. On the foundation of the Knights Hospitaller of St John. They had a hospital here, and it changed its nature, the institution, from a hospital to a college, and it needed a papal dispensation to do that. The Pope had to intervene to allow that to happen. St John is actually depicted there on the tower, a statue of him, holding his chalice, and around the chalice you can see a snake, the poison chalice. St John the Evangelist took the poison out of the chalice. He clarified the truth of Christ and presented the pure wine. So an amazing statue there. Yeah, Lady Margaret Beaufort, we featured her in an earlier video on mould in North Wales, where she actually financed the building of the parish church there. She was a woman of great wealth and was a great benefactor to many institutions. She was only 12 years old when she gave birth to Henry VII, King of England, Henry Tudor. And she never had any more children and actually ruined her, that pregnancy. But she did acquire great wealth through her life and used it to benefit this nation. And this is a lasting symbol of her generosity, isn't it? It's, for me, it's one of the most beautiful places in Cambridge. The red brick, the beautiful golden sandstone cornerstones, and just the detail on that entrance, you know, of her coat of arms, the red rose of Lancashire, the crown, the imperial ensign. Fantastic entrance to any college, isn't it? The entrance to St John's College, Cambridge. Quick. This is the famous round church in Cambridge, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was built by Augustinian monks in 1130 after they returned from Jerusalem, where they'd been part of the Crusader Kingdom, the First Crusader Kingdom. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Christ was buried in Jerusalem, is round like this, and in a sense they brought this back as a keepsake, a memory of that visit to Jerusalem. A bit of a medieval postcard, to be honest. If you look at the entrance, you'll see the arch, the Norman arch, the rounded arch with the teeth on, the tooth markings, famous Norman carvings. It just shows its age, its antiquity. This church was actually built before the cathedral was founded, before the university was founded. The university was founded in 1209. This was built in 1130, so it predates the founding of the university. There was a great town at Cambridge before the university came here. It was a great market town, and there are 3 or 4 buildings which we'll visit today, which predate the university itself, and this is one of them. Very interesting building. We're actually inhabiting here a medieval space. This was built, as I say, in 1130. These are the original Roman arches, the rounded arches, with the Roman pillars, the broad Roman pillars. So it's a unique piece of British architecture here. We're in Portugal Place in Cambridge, fairly nondescript location, but it was actually in this club in the interwar years that a group of Indian Muslim students met, and they tried to figure out the name of the new Islamic Republic that they wanted to create in northern India. And they brought the initials of all the provinces they wanted to be part of this new republic together. The Punjab, Assam, Kashmir, the Sindh, Balochistan. He brought them all together and said, what does that name, does that produce? Pakistan. And this is where the actual name of Pakistan was coined. So quite a significant place. Of course, they left out one province, Muslim province, in that name. That was East Bengal, which today is actually part of Bangladesh. So it was quite telling, really, because East Bengal split off from the rest of Pakistan in 1971. So maybe they should have found a room for a B in that name. We're in Magdalen Hall, the dining hall of this ancient college. It's got a very rarefied atmosphere to it. Look how beautifully it's set out. The dining here is something special. You can see all the former masters of the college and its famous alumni on the walls. Quite an exquisite place. Bibliotheca Pepsiana, Pepys Library, built in 1724 in honour of the great diarist Samuel Pepys. Beautiful building hidden away here at the back of Magdalen College. Place of learning, quietness. Cambridge is famous for its pubs, and there's no more famous than this one, the Pickerel Inn, opposite Magdalen College. It's actually owned by the college. And one of its most famous drinkers was C.S. Lewis, the famous author of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and Mere Christianity. He was a great friend of J.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Ring. And when Tolkien would come over from Oxford to visit his friend, they would go here for a glass of beer, and they would chew over the great issues of the day, theology and myths in history. And it was the basis of their literature. So there's been some intriguing conversations gone on in that boozer. This is the eponymous bridge, the bridge over the Cam, which gives the town its name. Originally the Cam was called a Granta. It was named by the Saxons. It only became the Cam in the Middle Ages. But this is the original spot on which Cambridge was founded. Before all else, Cambridge was a great religious institution. It was really created to train up members of the clergy. And each college has its own chapel. And this is the grandest of them all, St. John's College Chapel. It was designed by George Gilbert Scott, a great Victorian architect. And you'll see on the buttresses famous figures, famous alumni from the college, depicted almost as saints. Quite a dramatic setting. This college was predates the university. It was actually belonged to the Knights Hospitaller. Talked about that earlier at the gate. And one of its most famous alumni is Lord Palmerston, Henry John Temple, the great Prime Minister of Victorian England, a man who projected Britain onto the world stage. And we're in a world-class university here, Cambridge University. This is a world centre of learning. Probably one of the top 4 universities in the world. So it's a symbol of Britain's greatness. We are a great nation. Often our politicians are apologetic now for Britain, and they seem to lack confidence in whether Britain can stand alone on the world stage. But surely this university says, yes, we can stand alone and we can win on the world stage. Britain is a first-rate nation with a great pedigree, and this university has shaped the world. We're in one of the inner courts now of St John's College. The colleges are organised in courts, residential courts. And again, we've got dramatic gatehouse there. Quite beautiful architecture, lovely red brick again. And yeah, the colleges are the heart of the university. There's 34 colleges, and this is where the students are based. But the university actually predates the colleges. It was founded by students who fled difficulties in Oxford. They came to Cambridge, and they formed the university here in 1209. But initially there weren't colleges. The university predates the colleges, and they stayed in hostels. Then in 1284, Peterhouse became the first college, and this was founded in 1511, St John's College. And these courts are magnificent places to reside while you're studying. We're coming through St John's College now. We're in another courtyard. This is a different style of architecture, more Stuart, Charles I. It's amazing, isn't it, to come you're like coming through the history of Britain as you progress through the college. And it's all quite magnificent. This is the Bridge of Sighs. These are the bridges that cross the Cam at the back of the colleges. It's probably the most famous of all the bridges and the most loved. We'll take a walk over this now. What a magnificent inheritance we have in this nation, you know, these colleges. Because these colleges belong to the British nation. These are our places of learning. They belong to us. And these colleges shaped British culture. They shaped the way we think and the way we act. And the wonderful repositories of all that's great about Britain. And as you walk through the colleges, you appreciate the splendour of these places. What a great nation we inhabit. And this nation belongs to us. And we need to defend this. There are other cultures that have come amongst us who don't share this inheritance, who have no particular fondness for it. It's a quintessentially Christian inheritance. This is where our spiritual life is formed in these colleges. And we're going to go and look at some of the issues which have shaped the spiritual life of Cambridge. This is the gardens of St John's College. Quite a nice little vista to come and enjoy while you're studying. And it's a very privileged environment, isn't it, Cambridge? But then it's one of the most prestigious universities in the world. So, you know, beautiful place to come and study for 3 years or 4 years. We're in the heart of Cambridge here, outside the King's College Chapel. Magnificent building. In many ways the finest building in this university town. We've just taken a look at Great St Mary's Church, which is the heart of Cambridge. Everything in Cambridge is measured from that point. It's a very historic church. Queen Elizabeth I actually preached there. And we looked at the Gonville College, Gonville and Caius College, the Senate House. Gonville and Caius, interesting college. Gonville Hall, it was founded after the Great Plague of 1348. The plague came to Cambridge and it wiped out half the population of this town and more than half of the clergy of this town, because the clergy not only had to care for the sick, they had to perform last rites on the plague victims, so they were very susceptible to catching the plague. So there was a desperate need after the plague in 1348 to train up fresh clergy, and Gonville Hall was founded for that purpose. This is the famous King's College Chapel. It was begun by Henry VI in 1441. which was the year after the founding of Eton College. King's College was created to provide university education for the Eton scholars, but the problem with Henry VI was he wasn't a very good king, and in 1461 he lost the Battle of Towton in Yorkshire, and he was deposed, and Edward IV took the throne and lost interest in building this chapel. But Henry VII, who won the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, took up the mantle again and invested huge funds in completing this chapel. He used to send treasure chests full of gold up from London with 8 locks on, and there was 8 different members of college at a key, and they all had to open the treasure chest together so that nobody stole the gold. But it was actually completed in the reign of his son, Henry VIII. And inside the college, you'll see that as Henry VIII completed the building, he celebrated it with the name of himself and his wife. So it was Henry and Catherine, and then when he divorced Catherine, it was Henry and Anne. And this is all engraved in the woodwork of inside the college, inside the chapel. And then it was Anne was beheaded, supposedly for adultery. And then it was Henry and Jane. Jane died in childbirth, giving birth to Edward VI. And then it was Henry and Catherine Howard, Henry and Catherine Parr. We've missed out Henry and Anne of Cleves. I think she gets a mention in there as well. So we get the 6 wives of Henry VIII. As the college is completed inside and the decoration is finished, those names are engraved through the college. You can see his marital life unfold. What is also amazing about this chapel is the stained glass. It's original medieval and Tudor stained glass. It's so precious that during the Second World War it was actually removed from the chapel and put into storage, safe storage, and then replaced again when the war was over. So quite a magnificent building, really, the pièce de résistance of Cambridge University, King's College Chapel. We're inside the very elaborate King's College Chapel. You can see this is the highest fan ceiling in the world, very ornate. No expense was spared in building this. It really is fit for a king. This is the tower of St. Benet's Church, the heart of Cambridge. It's the oldest building in Cambridge. It's actually Saxon tower, built in 1030 before the Norman Conquest. It's amazing that it's lasted this long. Just shows you that Cambridge was a vibrant town before the university came along. And this church became the chapel, the effective chapel of Corpus Christi College, which again was founded in 1348, following the 1352, following the Great Plague. And we're going to, what is interesting, we're going to look at Corpus shortly. But across the road here, across the street, is the Eagle pub. Now, this is owned by Corpus. This is the courtyard of the Eagle. It's owned by Corpus Christi College. It's the place where Francis Crick and James Watson first announced that they discovered the secret of life, the DNA. There's the Cavendish laboratories on the left here, which we'll go and visit. And that's where they actually made this discovery. And they announced to their friends in this pub here over a pint the discovery of the DNA. So although this is a very ancient place, the knowledge is also very cutting edge. So we're actually here in the courtyard of the Eagle pub, and this is the place where Francis Crick announced this discovery of DNA, discovery which was to change the whole view of life and how life moves from one generation to the other, how hereditary characteristics are passed on. An incredible discovery he made with James Watson. Inside this pub, in the bar, I'm going to show you something incredible on the ceiling. The graffiti that bomber crews left before their raids on Germany. This graffiti on the ceiling of the Eagle pub was actually written by aircraft crews that were about to go on bombing raids into Germany. This was their sort of farewell to England. Some of these crews never returned. Some of these lads were shot down over Germany and died. So an amazing statement here, an amazing piece of history. One of the things you find in Cambridge is the people you meet tend to be quite intelligent people. And we've got one here, Danny, and you were a chemist at which
I was
university?
a chemist at York.
At York,
at
yeah.
York University.
So you appreciate the importance of the discovery of DNA.
Yes, yeah. Without DNA,
What difference do you think it made to the world?
without the discovery of the structured DNA, you wouldn't have, for example, anti-cancer drug, cisplatin, testicular cancer, prostate cancer. That works by getting in between the strands of DNA, undoing it, and doing various other things. Without knowing the structured DNA, how would you know to make a molecule which actively fits on the inside of the structure? How would you know to do that? How would you know to do that?
This is technical stuff. How do you think Francis Crick and James Watson felt when they finally made this discovery?
I'm not sure. I've
Quite
heard
elated to come in here and
that-
celebrate it with a pint.
I've heard that they're having a few pints when they worked it out, but I'm sure they felt. I don't think they appreciated probably the significance at the time of what they had found out.
You know, one of the great discoveries of science.
Yeah.
You know, talking about quantum physics and Einstein's theory. You know, equals MC2 squared or something. Where would you rate it? The discovery of DNA. How significant in these scientific
In the terms of sort of biosciences and life sciences, it's right up there. It's right up there at the top. Right up there at the top.
And this is the pub where it was announced.
This is the pub. This is the pub where they sat down and they worked the structure out. To be fair, there were two different structures going through the head at the time, and it's when they came in here that there was something to do with a spiral staircase in here. It might have been the spiral staircase down to the toilets, or a spiral staircase up to the top floor or something. They looked at the spiral staircase, and on the spiral staircase you've got a double helix. They thought, that works, that absolutely works, and then I think they went away and found the evidence to support it.
It's quite technical stuff, isn't it? I mean, Cambridge is a really ancient university. It goes back to 1209, which is sort of the medieval period, and it was rooted in sort of theology, Bible studies, producing clergy, and yet there's so many cutting-edge discoveries here as well.
There still is.
Yeah.
There still is. There's a lot of biotech firms around here. AstraZeneca, who are one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, have their European headquarters in Cambridge. Microsoft for a long time were in Cambridge. All their mobile telephony stuff was in Cambridge. There's a lot of big companies in Cambridge. You don't necessarily know really as well.
It's 800 years of history unfolding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of scholarship and research. I mean, what do you think of this place?
And it's
been a phenomenal success, though, hasn't it? 800 years of ongoing success.
Oh, it's been a great success.
Yeah.
It's been a great university.
It's been like the cutting edge of Britain, hasn't it, really? It's been the seed of Britain's greatness in many ways.
Cambridge?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's been a lot of discoveries here. There's been more Nobel Prize winners between like King's College and Trinity College than there has been for any other university, let alone individual colleges, any other university worldwide.
And it's not only science, of course. There's been so many prime ministers have come from here. Robert Walpole, the first ever prime minister. I think he went to was he King's College? Lord Palmerston. He was at St John's. More latter-day prime ministers as well, and of course his contribution in the field of history and the literature. You know, some great novelists have come from here as well.
Can't think of any off the top of my head.
Great poets.
Douglas Adams.
Thomas Gray, who wrote Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. He was at Peterhouse, I know that. A great economist.
College, isn't it?
Peterhouse, yeah. But the university is actually older than the colleges.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, the university was founded in 1209, but the colleges didn't. Peterhouse was 1284.
Yeah.
So there's quite a gap there. They used to just stay in hostels initially, the students. The collegiate system developed later.
I'm learning something,
There's a lot to learn about this place. It never stops. There's so much here. There's so much depth, you know. People have the impression that Cambridge is a place of dreamy ivory towers, but this place, Cavendish Laboratories, puts paid to that. This is where Ernest Rutherford first split the atom. What an amazing event that was. It was where J.J. Thomson first discovered the electrons. They went into subatomic structure. So it was a cutting-edge scientific place. Now, you might think that's a little bit sort of high-minded, and but A guy called Oppenheimer came here from America and studied under Rutherford, and he began the Manhattan Project back in the United States, which led to the development of the world's first atomic bomb, which was dropped on Hiroshima. So the birth of the greatest explosion in history was here. This is the old court of Corpus Christi College. It was actually built in 1352, and it's still inhabited today. The rooms are still in use for the students. So it's the longest continuous inhabited part of the university. This was created again after the Great Plague of 1348 visited Cambridge, decimated the population, decimated the clergy, and it was used to retrain clergy. The problem was the clergy were given a lot of privileges. They were given control of the markets. They weren't under the local laws. They had their own legal system, and they built up a lot of resentment from the local population. And in 1381, when the peasant rebellion broke out, the local people invaded this college. After they killed the Lord Chancellor of the university, they killed a number of officers of this college, and stole the silver, the college silver, which is quite an elaborate collection. And the authority of the university was restored with a vengeance, and the university came to dominate the town. Before the peasant rebellion in 1381, the town still dominated the gown, but afterwards, and ever since, the university has dominated this town like nowhere else. This beautiful castellated facade of Corpus Christi is actually part of the new court. It's a 19th century creation. William Watkins was the architect. It's beautiful, sort of sublime. This was a college where I studied as a postgraduate, and yeah, it's breathtaking to return and just appreciate. The architecture of Cambridge is stunning. It's like entering a dream world, a fantasy landscape. Building after building is of the highest quality. It's built at no expense. You know, it's a wonderful environment to come into, and people here are very privileged, you know, to enjoy this. The problem is with Cambridge that, for me, it's lost its Britishness. It's the notion of patriotism has disappeared from the universities. They're all globalists now. They're all serving the international order. They're all serving the world institutions like the United Nations, like the European Union, like the IMF and the World Bank and the multinationals. That's who their loyalty belongs to. Their loyalty no longer is to the British people, and to serve the British people. And because of that, they've lost their heart, they've lost their soul. For me, it's this very self-serving places now, detached from the rest of the population, elitist institutions. And the British people have the right to say, are you still working in our interest? Are you still advancing our interest? Or have you simply working in your own self-interest? And if they are, and I believe they actually are, well then we have the right to call them to account and to bring them back to what they were, servants of the British people. Hope you've enjoyed our historic tour of Cambridge. It's been a bit of a hurried day, but if you'd like this channel and you want to subscribe, feel free to do so. If you'd like to make a donation towards the cost of these videos, also feel free. Thanks a lot.